My name is Selene Ardant. I'm 33, and I swear none of this was supposed to happen. I thought I was in control. I thought I could shape the story the way I wanted. For a long time, I made people believe Daniel, my husband, was the one sneaking around. I told my sister, my friends, even his own mother that he was distant, that he must have another woman. I said it with so much confidence that people nodded and comforted me, and I felt justified. The truth, I was the one who had been sending messages late at night, smiling at my phone when I should have been asleep beside him. I told myself it wasn't real, that it was just attention, just harmless flirting with Victor from work. But then Daniel's eyes changed, and I knew something had shifted. He stopped fighting with me, stopped explaining himself, and started watching quietly. That silence scared me more than any shouting could. I didn't understand at the time that he wasn't retreating. He was building his case. Now the papers are on the table, and I'm the one being judged. It started at home, during a family dinner that should have been simple. Daniel had just come in from work, still in his shirt and tie, while I served pasta to the kids. Evelyn, his mother, joined us that night, and the air was already tense because she always found some way to remind me how lucky I was to have her son. I decided to flip the script. I leaned back in my chair, sighed loudly, and said that Daniel had been acting secretive. I said I had a feeling he was hiding something, maybe another woman. He froze, fork halfway to his mouth, and asked me what I was talking about. I told him I just wanted honesty, that I deserved to know the truth. Evelyn's eyes snapped to him, sharp and suspicious. Caleb stared at me wide-eyed, and Mira asked softly if Daddy didn't love Mommy anymore. Daniel put his fork down and said nothing, his jaw tight. I pressed harder, insisting his late nights must mean something. He finally stood, walked out without a word, and closed the door behind him. I smiled at Evelyn and said, maybe she should ask her son what he's really up to. A week later, I took things further. We went out with a few friends to a casual restaurant, the kind of place where everyone knows each other and gossip moves fast. Daniel sat beside me, quiet as usual, while I told the table how distant he had been. I laughed as I said maybe he had a little secret life, maybe he was seeing someone at work. People chuckled, thinking I was only joking, and I soaked up the attention. I added that, if he had nothing to hide, he wouldn't guard his phone like it was made of gold. Daniel's face turned red, but he didn't interrupt me. I could feel the eyes on us, friends shifting uncomfortably, but I kept going. I even mentioned Victor, my so-called work friend, just to twist the knife. I said Victor actually knew how to listen, unlike my husband who barely looked up from his papers at night. The table went silent after that, forks clinking against plates. One of our friends tried to change the subject, but the damage was done. Daniel set down his glass, looked at me in a way that made my stomach turn, and stood. Without a word, he walked out of the restaurant. People stared at me, waiting for me to explain. I shrugged, told them he was just sensitive, and rolled my eyes like it was nothing. But inside, I felt a flicker of panic. He hadn't defended himself. He hadn't even argued. He had just left me there, alone with my own words. At work, things with Victor were heating up in ways I pretended were harmless. He lingered by my desk, sent me little jokes during meetings, and once even offered to drive me home when my car was in the shop. I told myself it was just friendly, but I liked how it felt. Daniel started noticing my late nights and asked why I was always busy with projects. I told him he was being paranoid, that not every woman has time to sit at home waiting for her husband. He didn't argue, just nodded slowly, and that silence unnerved me more than any fight. One afternoon, Victor picked me up outside the office, and I thought no one saw. But a few days later, Mira mentioned at dinner that Uncle Victor had a nice car. Evelyn, who was visiting again, froze with her fork mid-air. She asked Mira who Victor was, and my daughter chirped innocently about the man who drove Mommy home. Daniel didn't say a word. He just kept eating, calm, deliberate. That night, when I grabbed my phone from the counter, I found him watching me. His eyes weren't angry, just steady. I knew instantly he had seen something. My stomach dropped as I thought of the messages I hadn't deleted, The ones where I told Victor I felt alive again. The ones with little hearts at the end. Daniel didn't speak. He just walked past me, leaving me clutching my phone like it might burn my hands. The breaking point came at my parents' house during a family dinner. I had decided to get ahead of the whispers, to control the story before Daniel could. While everyone ate, I told my parents and Sister Cara that Daniel had become cold, that he barely spoke to me anymore, that he made me feel unwanted. I said his jealousy was out of control, that he accused me of things I'd never even think of doing. Cara nodded, quick to defend me, saying maybe I deserved more than a man who couldn't appreciate me. My parents looked uncomfortable but stayed quiet. Daniel sat across the table, silent, not even touching his food. Evelyn, who had been invited too, finally snapped. She asked me why Mira kept mentioning a man named Victor. She said she had heard enough lies, and that Daniel deserved better than the way I spoke about him. I felt the room tilt against me, and I tried to spin it back, saying I only talked to Victor because Daniel pushed me away. I said it was harmless, just conversation, nothing more. Before I could finish, the doorbell rang. My father went to answer, and a man in a suit stepped into the dining room. He handed me an envelope with my name on it. Everyone watched as I tore it open with shaking hands. Inside were divorce papers, attached with printed screenshots. My face burned as I read my own words out loud in front of everyone. Daniel still didn't speak. He simply stood and walked out. The next days blurred into panic. Daniel refused to come home, and when I called, he let it ring. I told Cara that he was being dramatic, that divorce over a few messages was absurd. She comforted me, saying men always overreact when their pride is hurt. But then word spread. Our friends already knew. They had seen the same screenshots I had tried to deny. Somehow Daniel had them neatly organized, with dates, times, even moments, when I claimed to be at the kids' school while I was really with Victor. I learned from a neighbor that Daniel had been meeting with a lawyer downtown. The thought of him calmly preparing, while I scrambled to defend myself, made me furious. He wasn't shouting, wasn't breaking things. He was building a case. Evelyn called me once, her voice sharp as glass, telling me her son was doing the right thing. My own parents, embarrassed, avoided my questions. I tried reaching Victor, but his number went straight to voicemail. He had vanished as if we'd never known each other. Alone, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the papers, reading over the lines about custody. Daniel was asking for primary care of Caleb and Mira, citing neglect, citing me. I wanted to scream that it wasn't true, that I was still a good mother. But there, in black and white, were my own texts saying I was too busy to pick them up while I was out with Victor. The evidence was undeniable. In court, Daniel stayed calm while I crumbled. The judge granted him primary custody and financial control. I tried to plead, saying the affair meant nothing, but no one listened. Daniel collected the papers, nodded once, and walked past me without a glance. That silence cut deepest. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.